And we also, I'm just going to tee this up for you before we go deeper. We've got a Blackcaps team that's trucking along nicely. They had a home series win against Sri Lanka in ODIs. We'd expect that. Then they go to a different country and they win both games against the host nation, Pakistan. They win their other game against South Africa ahead of the Champions Trophy. Where is your confidence levels for the Blackcaps? Because I am so confident that I'm nervous.
Yeah, that's one of those, once you start getting confident, you have to have expectations now. And then once you've got expectations, there's a chance that those won't be met. And then you have to be nervous about that. So, yeah, I guess that's part and parcel, isn't it, of having what seems to be a pretty good team heading into a decent tournament. So I'm also pretty confident. I want to try and avoid expectations as much as possible, but this is a team who, if the way they've been playing, the way they seem set up, the balance they seem to have found in the ODI team here, and just the amount of players they have in good form at the right time, I'd be extremely disappointed if they don't make it out of their group stage. I mean, it's not a huge tournament. You play a couple of group stage games, then you go semifinals and finals, I'm pretty sure is all it is. So, I mean, they should be making the semifinals. And if you make the semifinals, okay, it's like a, one-off game in the semi, one-off game in the final. Like, anything could happen. You might just have a bad day and you're out in the semis or whatever, but you're in contention. You also might just have a couple good days and win the whole thing. So if you can get out of your group, you're a team that can win the whole thing. And I think the Blackcaps are good enough to get out of their group. So hopefully I don't look stupid in a couple of days if they get rolled for 80 against Pakistan or something in the first game.
The Pakistan factor is huge.
It is.
Because we've literally just won back-to-back games against Pakistan in Pakistan. We're a better team than Pakistan. Like, our fielding poos all over Pakistan's fielding. Our tactics, our strategy, Kiwi grit. Like, we've got all that. And Pakistan, credit to them, good batting, good bowling. They don't have all of that which the Blackcaps have. But even after beating them twice in a row in their home conditions, you never know with Pakistan. And they could come out and just destroy the Blackcaps in the first game of the Champions Trophy. And that's where this might slide into mindfulness. It's like there's a fine line between your doubt keeping you humble and your doubt self-sabotaging you. Because it's like, okay, you got to be critical of your own thoughts, especially what we do here. You got to keep poking holes in your beliefs, keep, changing your perspective. Okay, I doubt this thought that I had. I've got to check it, got to double check it, got to see what my intuition's doing. But then at some point, your doubt just becomes self-sabotaging. And it just blocks all your blessings, for lack of a better term. So we've got to wait and see. But there is that little wrinkle of doubt, like, okay, we're better than Pakistan. But anyone who follows global cricket knows that Pakistan can do anything. And they are the last champions of the Champions Trophy. They won the tournament in 2017. Now they're in their home conditions. Hopefully, like the rest of the cricketing world, they just look past New Zealand. They got their attention on the India game, and they don't worry about us too much. But we'll see how that goes. We'll be keeping an eye on the Champions Trophy, which begins New Zealand versus Pakistan Wednesday night, 10 p.m. Now, we also have Ford Trophy games today. So this is a good opportunity to prepare our bonus podcast on Thursday, because Thursday we will be reacting to the Blackcaps' first game of the Champions Trophy. We'll also be going deep into the latest action in the Ford Trophy. Plus, I imagine we'll have some last-minute A-League Derby, Aotearoa Derby thoughts between the Wellington Phoenix and Auckland FC, or should I say Auckland FC versus Wellington Phoenix, because that game is at Mount Smart Stadium, the greatest stadium in Auckland. Blackcaps versus Pakistan. So as we said, Blackcaps, they cruised through that tri-series. It was awesome. We got batting power. We got Matt Henry on the rise as a legendary Aotearoa seamer. Will O'Rourke found form in the final. Interestingly, Matt Henry, Ben Sears, Lockie Ferguson, none of them bowled in the final of the tri-series. It was Will O'Rourke, it was Jacob Duffy, it was Nathan Smith. So New Zealand won that tri-series final with essentially a second-tier seam attack. So that's another little notch in their resume heading into the Champions Trophy. Another reason to be confident and, if you're like us, a little bit nervous. There's two good spinners. We got Mitchell Santner. We got Michael Bracewell doing a good job. And we've got like really good fielding. We've said it before. Glenn Phillips, best fielder in the world. Michael Bracewell, I saw him take an excellent catch. Mitchell Santner had an excellent run out in one of the games. The reason I kind of want Nathan Smith in the team, because if Nathan Smith is in the team, he makes their fielding even better. So there's a lot to like about this Blackcaps team. I got two kind of selection pockets. The second is the third seamer. So because I think you're going to go Matt Henry, you're going to go Will O'Rourke. So then you got Lockie Ferguson, Nathan Smith, and Jacob Duffy, now that Ben Sears has withdrawn due to his hamstring injury. So you got a seamer to select there. We can discuss the nitty-gritty. You've also got a situation where they started the tournament, the Tri-Series tournament, with Will Young and Rachin Ravindra. Rachin Ravindra got a ball to his forehead, and he didn't play the rest of the Tri-Series. Throughout that Tri-Series, Will Young didn't score many runs. Then Devon Conway comes in to replace Rachin Ravindra. He scores a lot of runs. So we got Devon Conway in form. We got Will Young out of form. We got Rachin Ravindra with the sore head. Somehow they need to get an opening combo out of those three players. Will Young is out of form. He is lacking a few runs. But in a bigger picture, he's had a very good period of ODI batting. So if we use this start of 2023 marker, Will Young, he's second for runs. Okay, he's played a lot of games. He's played 32 games. The only dude who's played more than 32 games, which is, we've got Daryl Mitchell and Will Young as the batters who have played 32 games. They're the only dudes who have played 32 games. But then we've got Tom Latham, who has played 35 games. So Will Young and Daryl Mitchell, they're scoring a lot of runs because they're playing a lot of games. Okay, we know that from our appreciation of England, India, and Australian stats. They always score the most runs in the World Test Championship because they play the most games. It's not rocket science. It's pretty obvious. But Will Young is also averaging 43.7 in those 32 innings, which is the fourth highest batting average for the Blackcaps in this period. Kane Williamson's averaging 80.6, Daryl Mitchell's averaging 49.7, Devon Conway's averaging 48.3, Will Young's averaging 43.7. Will Young has been a consistent contributor at the top of the order mainly, sometimes batting 3, sometimes batting 4 for the Blackcaps in this period. So you've got his recent dip in form. He scored a 90 not out or something in the first ODI of Sri Lanka's tour of New Zealand, hasn't scored many runs since then. So he didn't score many runs in the rest of that ODI series. Had a few okay knocks in the Super Smash, which Central Districts won, and then he struggled in the Tri-Series. So you've got a short kind of period of him lacking runs, but you've got a bigger period of him being a consistent member, consistent run scorer in the ODI team. I mean, the dude's got 10 50s. He's only got the 1 century, but he's got 10 50s. For context, Kane Williamson's got 6 50s. Daryl Mitchell's got 5. But again, Will Young's playing a lot, so he's going to have more of those runs, more of those scores, but he is getting those scores. He is doing his job. I think Rachin Ravindra is a certified starter if he's healthy, but he is dealing with concussion symptoms, so they might not want to rush him back. And as we know, scoring runs in Pakistan, most of the time, they're scoring runs quickly. So Rachin Ravindra's got a strike rate of 109 during this period. He has a career ODI strike rate of 109, which is his career, funny that. And in our news yesterday, you just came out the gate with a couple of bad charts. You gave us charts, which I do like to see. So we've got batting average and batting strike rate. This is from November 21st, 2023 till today. Highest strike rate
since the World Cup, basically.
Since the end of the World Cup or the start?
Yeah, after the World Cup, which is why Ravindra's average isn't very good, but his strike rate is very high in that time.
Yes, he has the highest strike rate for Blackcaps batters in this period. His prolific run scoring and the way he scores runs, I think if he's healthy, he's a first 11 batter for sure. Then you get into Will Young versus Devon Conway. So how are you feeling about that triangle of batters competing for the opening batter role, which could be tweaked if they just shuffle Tom Latham out of the team? If they give Tom Latham the big don't argue, fend to the face, get out of here, or they give him the old Roger Tuivasa-Sheck one-on-one sidestep in the corner, Tom Latham, broken ankle, Tuivasa-Sheck scores. Because Tom Latham hasn't scored many runs in ODI cricket, but he did score a 50. He had a few lucky opportunities, lucky chances in that Tri-Series final, but he did score a 50. He does have mana with the Blackcaps. I don't think the Blackcaps selectors and senior players are going to be like, nah, bold Tom Latham, you're out of the team fresh after a 50 just before a major tournament as the wicketkeeper. So in that situation, Devon Conway becomes the wicketkeeper and Will Young or Ravindra, someone there, drops down the order. I don't think that will happen, so I think we've got 3 lads competing for 2 opening batter roles.
Yeah, in terms of the recent form stuff, you probably would say that the best situation would be to drop Tom Latham, but then that has flow-on effects, like you say, because you're talking about 3 openers, and then one of them would have to bat probably 4. I think Williamson's not going to budge from 3, and you might slide Daryl Mitchell down to 5, but potentially it also might be coming in and batting at 5, which is a very different role than what these other guys have been doing to lay down the evidence that they have for their selection cases. They've all been trying to be openers. So that's tricky, but then also Latham is probably just a better wicketkeeper than Devon Conway too, which is another factor, because if Matt Henry's having a chance dropped off, if he gets Babar Azam outside edge, the 3rd over of the game or something, and that catch goes down, maybe strangled down leg side or something, and then Conway doesn't take that catch, and then Babar Azam goes on and scores 100, as he very well might do. Although actually, if you look at the Pakistan records against us, it's Fakhar Zaman who's the guy who tends to terrorize us. He has an incredible average against New Zealand. I think we're his favorite ODI opponent. But yeah, there's a few too many moving parts to that one, which is why I agree. I think it's probably just 3 guys fits into 2 openers. And if Rachin Ravindra is still showing signs of concussion, well, that solves the thing, at least for the first game, right? Because there's no need to rush him in if you've got 3 candidates. You just pick the other 2 guys. The long-term picture is that Will Young has been in great form in ODI stuff. It is his favorite format in terms of what he's done in internationals so far. But he hasn't been scoring as many runs lately. And Devin Conway's big picture is that for the last couple of years, he's not been scoring many runs in any format, but he has been scoring them lately. So it's a weird little one where whichever perspective you look at it, it changes the picture. So a bit of a kaleidoscopic opening partnership situation going on. But my suspicion is that at least for the first game against Pakistan, I just don't think they'll rush Ravindra back. They'll just keep in Conway and Young. And frankly, like any 2 out of 3 is probably a good option.
Tom Latham is in an interesting role. And this is something that you see a lot of these international ODI teams, they're just trying to play T20 cricket. And as we've talked about before, ODI cricket, one-day cricket is a fantastic format because it incorporates a wide range of cricketing skills. And the Blackcaps batting lineup, like Kane Williamson's going to be, well, he didn't really do it in the Tri-Series, just scored a lot of runs quickly in the Tri-Series. But there do need to be batters in your team who can battle through 10 overs of adversity, who can rebuild an innings after an early collapse, or if you get off to a hot start, lose a couple wickets, then suddenly you're rebuilding your innings around the 25 over mark, and you still need to prepare for the hitting that's going to come later on. So what I'm looking for with Tom Latham in the Champions Trophy is 1 or 2 gritty knocks. To me, that's all he needs to do. Because there's a lot of firepower around him. Like Daryl Mitchell scores quickly. Glenn Phillips scores quickly. Shout out to Glenn Phillips. Wasn't dismissed in the Tri-Series. And he's I think the global cricketing world kind of overlooks how awesome these dudes are. Like Glenn Phillips is the best fielder in the world, but he's also an extraordinary batter who is now one of the best spinners in New Zealand cricket as well. But you don't just have Glenn Phillips, you got Michael Bracewell. What's Michael Bracewell's nickname? The Beast. Why is he called the Beast? Because he's a mofo beast. And we saw a few glimpses of just how easy he can smash boundaries. Then you get to Santner, then you get to Henry, all of whom can smash boundaries themselves as well. But before that, you got Tom Latham. And he just needs to tie the innings together. Because Kane Williamson's going to do that at the top of the order. You lose a couple early wickets, you lose an early wicket, whatever it is. Kane Williamson's there to rebuild the innings, to keep it ticking along. But Kane Williamson's so good, he can move through the flows of run scoring that is required in a 50-over game. You also need that in that number 5 spot. And that's why Tom Latham's batted there for a long time now. He didn't actually play in the last Champions Trophy, though. I went back and I looked. It was a very strange Blackcaps team. Like, we had Corey Anderson played a major role. Neil Broom was playing a major role. Luke Ronke was playing a major role.
Was that when Luke Ronke was opening?
It must have been, because if I remember correctly, which is very difficult to do after years of Aotearoa vitamin usage, I don't think that was because thinking back, that wasn't, it was kind of similar. It was that 2-year period where the 2019 World Cup, 2017 Champions Trophy, where the Blackcaps were doing a lot of weird shit as far as, okay, we were preparing for the tournament this way, but we're just going to change it last minute for the tournament. I think Luke Ronke fell into that category because you had, you've got Colin Munros, you've got Henry Nichols who are being used in that opening position. And comparing these two teams from this Champions Trophy squad to that Champions Trophy squad, okay, you don't have Southey, you don't have Bolt, but I think this team is much better. Because there were a few kind of deep cut Kiwi cricketers who are in that Champions Trophy squad. Whereas now it's like, okay, Neil Broom or Daryl Mitchell. Well, one dude averages 50 in Test cricket and 50 in ODI cricket, and is just one of the best batters in the world. Okay, we've got like I can't remember who the all-rounder was, but we've got Glenn Phillips. Like, okay, we've got this phenom Rachin Ravindra. Like, this Black Caps group is very good, and it just is aligned with everything we've been saying about maybe the next wave of Black Caps cricket is just better than the previous wave, which seems blasphemous for many cricket fans considering the players who have departed. But Tom Latham has been basically developed or just simmering away as that number 5 batter wicketkeeper. He wasn't that great in the last World Cup, though. He hasn't been great in any World Cups, to be honest. He averages like 22 in World Cups. I don't think he has had that commanding ODI moment. I don't know if he'll have it in the Champions Trophy. I don't know if he needs to do it either, though. Because he can just kind of play a pretty chill innings, little bit of grit, strike rate of 90, feed the strike to Daryl Mitchell, feed the strike to Glenn Phillips, feed the strike to Michael Bracewell, who will smash boundaries and score very quickly. So it's kind of a very nuanced role that the Black Caps have with Tom Latham, and I think it's going to be a very important role. But in assessing how successful he's going to be in this role, I'm just looking for 2, maybe 3 gritty innings. It might just be a 40. It might be a 60. Who knows, it might be a century to save the game. But that's what I'm looking for Tom Latham. And like, him and Kane Williamson are the 2 dudes who are similar in that batting lineup. And then you've got a lot of batters around them who will score quickly and score all around the park. Like Daryl Mitchell's full 360, Glenn Phillips is 360. Those dudes, Michael Bracewell can score 360. And they have a lot of power. So they're going to be hitting those good length balls for 6. That's where you get into the excitement of what the Black Caps are capable of, because they should score 300 runs every game, if aside from excellent bowling.
Yeah, and they'll probably need to score 300 runs most games. I mean, they didn't have to in the final of the Tri-Series there, but in the other games they were certainly hitting around that mark, and that's probably, like, they've had a pretty good introduction of what the conditions are going to be like. You can't have had a better introduction than just playing in the country and on some of the wickets of what you're going to face, and it's pretty clear, like, you can get a bit of bounce on these pitches if you hit the deck hard enough. Will O'Rourke's shown that, but relatively flat, not going to spin heaps, pretty dry, and runs will be, well, runs are never easy to score, but runs will be a lot easier to score than in certain other places they could be playing around this time of the year. So the big scores are probably going to be expected and probably necessary, not just setting them up but chasing them as well. You know, there's a, which is another angle to that thing of the balance of the batting lineup, is, you know, someone batting at number 5 like Tom Latham is you might be rebuilding the innings and like in the 10th over 25 for 3 or something like that, rebuilding the innings, but also you're chasing 330 and you have to score it like 7 and over the, like, averaged out over the rest of the innings. So that's a tricky role, but yeah, and I didn't only have the charts in the newsletter on Monday as well. I also, from the same website, found a new website for stats, which is where this all came from. I also was looking at, because I was curious about Will O'Rourke, because he came in, took a few, like, his ODI average is not as good as his test average. I understand his test average is awesome, but I noticed in particular the way that he just came in and like swept up the tail in that Pakistan innings late on. I'm thinking he feels like a very good death bowler. Like, it feels like the stuff that he's doing bowling I think he's opening. He's been opening alongside Matt Henry in a lot of these ones, hasn't he? Well, then that might alternate depending on who's playing as well. But I didn't feel like he was getting a lot of wickets in the early spells where he's bowling these like just a little bit back of a length, jagging back in towards the right-hander. Some of them are going a bit too far, and a couple wides down the side or whatever. A couple that have been picked up by batters, but also quite a few of them that are pretty accurate and difficult to play, but not necessarily getting wickets. Whereas I think if you're bowling those things at the end of an innings, when guys have nothing to lose but to try score quick runs, you're going to get a lot of wickets doing that kind of thing because you're really limiting the amount of options that the batter has, and they can't just duck or block or leave or whatever. They've got to score quick runs. And so I was looking, I wanted to see what his record was in death bowling particularly. So I looked it up on this, I think it was called Crick Metric or something.
I was going to say, you're just going to keep that a secret, or you're going to share it with myself?
Yeah, no,
and
I just can't remember what
audience?
it is, but I think it was called Crick Metric, something like that. It looked like a website designed 20 years ago, but those are my favorite websites sometimes. So, simple is good enough. And he's taken 6 wickets at an average of 10.67 and an RPO of 6.19 in overs 40 to 50 in ODI cricket in his career. I think he's got 14 wickets overall, so 8 wickets in the first 40 overs and 6 wickets in the last 10 overs when he's bowled. I think it doesn't tell me how many overs he's bowled, but I would imagine working from the 6 wickets at 10.67 means he's bowled about he would have gone for about 60 something, 62, 63 runs or something with 6.2 RPO, must be about 10 overs, right? So he's probably got around about 10 overs, something around, give or take. And those are extremely good records. But I also looked at the batting ones, and the thing that shocked me the most of any of this is that the guy, and this is since January 2020, so it does encompass I just figured I'd go for this decade. Just seemed like a nice 5-year period would give me a decent span, especially because we're only talking about a 10 over block. So there's not a lot of, there's not a lot of that to go around. So the bigger the catchment, the better. So that encompasses all of Will O'Rourke's career. It doesn't encompass all of, it will encompass all of Glenn Phillips's career as well. Because he's the obvious one I thought, who's going to be the batting closer? Who's going to be the guy who scores a whole bunch of runs at a really fast strike rate in the last 10 overs of games? Well, Glenn Phillips has scored 382 runs at an average of 38.2, 138.9 strike rate in the last 10 overs of games. That's awesome. That's amazing. And that probably... you're not always just slogging to put up a big score. Sometimes you're cruising towards a total where you don't have to score fast. Sometimes you're just trying to hang on and not get bowled out. So there's a few, there's a bit of variance in terms of the situations there. But on the whole, amazing stuff there from Glenn Phillips. However, Tom Latham in the last 10 overs of ODI innings. So Glenn Phillips has 382 runs. Tom Latham has scored 409 runs in the same amount of situations. I think he would have batted a couple more times, though. He's had a longer career. However, the averages, Tom Latham, 37.18, Glenn Phillips, 38.2. The strike rates, Glenn Phillips, 138.9, Tom Latham, 138.18. So he's right up there alongside Glenn Phillips. Slightly worse in a couple of those ones, but not by much. And that's an interesting one to think about for Tom Latham, because I don't know that that's the impression he gives as an ODI batter. But I think when he gets in those kind of situations, he doesn't face a lot of dot balls, for one thing. So if you score 1 run off every delivery you face, well, that's 100 strike rate right there. You have to hit a couple 4s in an innings to push that a lot higher. So I don't know. There's definitely been a few innings where he's stuck around and gone fairly big. He's got a couple ODI hundreds, so those will be part of that, cashing in towards the end of those big knocks. But he's done some nice stuff in the death as well. He's able to accelerate there in a way that you don't necessarily picture for a guy who's most famous for being a block and leave test opener. So and admittedly, this is going back 5 years, so some of the stuff is probably encompassing more fruitful periods of Tom Latham's ODI career, whereas lately he's mostly been getting ducks, and he did get that 50 in the final of the Tri-Series, in which he was dropped a couple times along the way, but you take what you can get. But yeah, there's definitely there's a different version of Tom Latham there to the one that people expect to see, which has excelled in ODI cricket in a few different ways before. A few different ways, but in the few different ways that suit a guy batting at number 5 in that kind of pivot position.
Yeah, I think the impressive thing for Tom Latham is I'll wrap it up in a nice bow. He's got the same death batting record as Glenn Phillips.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous to even think. So nice mahi there. But as we say, Tom Latham can also rebuild the innings. So he can do both. So that's why he's there. The other bloke on this list that I'm fascinated by, well, there's two. Daryl Mitchell, averaging 36, strike rate of 141.4. But then we go Beastie Bracewell, averaging 42 with a strike rate of 163.4. That is Michael Bracewell. That's what he does. That's why he's in the team, because he's also bowling pretty handy off spin, which over a pretty big sample size, he's averaging 31.2. But along with Santner and Henry, they were 3 of the 4 best bowlers in the Tri-Series. So Bracewell's bowling is in form as well as being an absolutely destructive hitter. And one last observation from this list of death bowling. Well, I got a couple, because Daryl Mitchell's not on your list.
Jimmy Neesham is at the bottom. You see his numbers?
Yes, yeah, I do see that. Averaging 43.6, conceding 10.8 RPO. And he's the only lad hitting, conceding over 10 RPO. But Daryl Mitchell, death bowler extraordinaire. Didn't make the cut there, so I found that interesting. Not interesting at all, just having a joke. But we got Jacob Duffy's been pretty solid. Averaging 20.3 with an RPO of 9.2. But Will O'Rourke, he is better than Henry. He's better than Southey. He's better than Trent Boult. Now, what's my favourite cricket stat game that we've done over the years, or over the last few weeks, months, I don't know, where we compare in a very rough way how the lads like Will O'Rourke, Kyle Jamieson, Rachin Ravindra, how they stack up against Southey, Boult, Williamson. In a very crude way, they're better. And now we've got a little bit of evidence that Will O'Rourke in death bowling is better than Southey and Boult, let alone Henry. Seems notable. I don't want to shut up Matt Henry though, because there's this element in coming into this Champions Trophy where Matt Henry has become one of New Zealand's best players. He has become world class. He is one of the best seam bowlers, full stop, in the world. I also feel like we're in that range with Mitchell Santner. I feel like Mitchell Santner's getting better. I feel like Mitchell Santner has got better with the captaincy. So, and then you've got the other guys like Mitchell's on the rise, Ravindra's on the rise, Conway and Will Young are kind of plateauing. Glenn Phillips is on the rise. There's a lot of Kiwi cricketers on the rise regardless of their age. Because Bracewell's on the rise, but he's like 45 years old. But how does that, what's your best seam attack makeup? So we've got Henry, O'Rourke, Bracewell, Santner. You might get some overs from Phillips, Ravindra, maybe Daryl Mitchell. That leaves, I think we agree, that leaves space for one more bowler. Ferguson, Duffy, Smith. Who are you going with?
Well, as far as the death bowling stats there, Ferguson doesn't seem to take a lot of wickets late in games, but he does have a good runs per over, 6.8, whereas look a little bit higher. Southey took a decent amount of wickets there, but at a terrible RPO of 9.3. Duffy's is expensive too. But, I mean, O'Rourke and Matt Henry are going to be the guys who bowl the late overs because these stats back up what we saw in this Tri-Series, is that they're just the best at that. So I think you want someone who can get through those sort of get through a few more of those early overs because those are also potentially your opening bowlers, which leans a bit more towards. Uh, well, frankly, that could be any of those three guys. I think what we saw, even though it was limited opportunities there, but I think from what we saw from Ben Sayers playing the first couple of games is that maybe he's not quite ready. I think maybe that was a bit too much too soon there for him. He didn't quite seem to have the consistent threat that these other fellas have offered, but I understand the logic behind that, of trying to just get someone who's quick and someone who can bounce in. And he did take the Test cricket very well straight away playing against Australia, so you had reason to back that. But I don't know that they're necessarily weakened by having him ruled out of the tournament when Jacob Duffy is a very solid replacement to come in, and Lockie Ferguson, it seems, is going to be all right to play. And I would lean towards Ferguson. I think he gives you a little bit more variety in terms of he can be a wicket-taking guy throughout the 50 overs. He's the quickest of those guys. He's the most experienced, which I think is pretty important, considering he's been to multiple World Cups, and we're looking at a bowling lineup that doesn't have Bolt or Southey at a ICC tournament for the first time in a long time. So that experience counts for a lot, I'd imagine, in this situation. And I also just think if they were already leaning towards someone like Ben Sayers, they clearly have a penchant for pace in the first place. Well, then you just pick the fastest guy who's coming out. And I suspect it was always going to be Ferguson anyway, whether Sayers was injured or not. I think it was just a matter of he wasn't available for the warm-up stuff. And when he was injured. So they've just had to be a little bit more careful. I'm sure they'll rotate it throughout. He's not going to play all three group stage games, but I think their ideal stuff would probably be Ferguson, and then we just have to hope he's in good ODI shape for it, and given that he tends to mostly just play 4-over spell T20 stuff these days.
Ferguson has been all right in his T20 competitions, played the Big Bash League, played the IL T20, whatever that is. But in ODI bowling, since the start of 2023, he's averaging 43.3, which the only other dudes averaging 40 with at least 15 wickets are Rachin Ravindra, 47, Ish Sodhi, 42.7. So, it seems a bit crazy, but Matt Henry in this period's averaging 24.9 and Lockie Ferguson's averaging 43.3. That tells you the difference between Matt Henry's legendary status right now and Lockie Ferguson coming back into the team. I agree that they probably played Ben Sayers to give him an opportunity in case Lockie Ferguson wasn't going to be able to play.
Yeah.
I think they will go with Lockie Ferguson. It is a little bit interesting, though, because Duffy deserves an opportunity. He's been fantastic in recent times. And then you've got Nathan Smith, who's a good bowler, good batter, good fielder, seems perfect for this type of situation, but he is the least experienced of those players. And we can't forget Mark Chapman. If the Blackcaps need to make a change, they got Mark Chapman there, who can bat anywhere in the lineup, and they got Nathan Smith, as well as whoever else is missing, probably Jacob Duffy, but Nathan Smith covers a lot of bases, which is actually a baseball reference, I think, there, so maybe we can tweak that one. He covers all the stumps, he's standing on the top of the stumps. He's covering all the stumps.